everybody is welcome at Jesus' table, man. Like, the language I speak, the music I speak is supposed to attract people with some rough backgrounds.
Hold me, I'm sinking, Father, this world is just too much on my own.
Today I'm excited to chat with a guy I've known for a long, long time. I've known his wife even more intimately because of work we do with Teen Challenge Canada. But Teah Bailey is going to share his testimony, his story, his ministry, and how God's just shown up and transformed his life in the world of music and Christian rap. And I just love this guy. We had the chance to spend a couple hours together actually a few weeks ago. Hey, Teah, and you know, just saw his heart and his desire to show up with his talents for the kingdom and really help men in general. And so I'll give you a quick bio on this guy because it's worth knowing and it's going to tie into our time together. So 180 is an award-winning Canadian hip-hop artist. He's the founder of 18tea Ministries, which is an organization focused on supporting youth and communities all over Canada, using concerts, workshops, covering topics such as faith, bullying, teen suicide, and drug awareness. Man, do we need this. 180 was raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the same place as me, and has experienced everything from homelessness, similar to me, to heavy cocaine addiction. In 2010, he entered into a faith-based rehab program called Teen Challenge. And upon graduation in 2011, the same time I discovered this ministry, 180 founded 18tea Ministries and released 3 mixtapes and produced an album for a national charity. He then released 5 independent studio albums, with Reverence winning with Reverence winning 2017 Covenant Award for Rap Album of the Year, Ventilation being nominated for 2019 ECMA Award, and 2019 Covenant Awards. And in 2021, he won the Music New Brunswick Award, which he was saying to me offline is one of his most proudest moments, for Song of the Year, and became the first Black artist ever win a Music New Brunswick Award. He wasn't done there when in 2022, 180 won the ECMA, get this, Rap Hip Hop Recording of the Year. He also took home 2 2022 Covenant Awards through Gospel Music Association of Canada. 180 took home Rap Song of the Year. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's period. That's not within Christian circles. That's the Rap Song of the Year as an artist. And he took home Rap Song of the Year, Rap Artist of the Year. 2023, 180 returned to the GMA winning Rap Artist of the Year for a second straight year. It goes on, and he's got a major concert coming up here in 6 weeks time, and it's with CeCe Winans, is that right?
Yep.
And
CeCe Winans, Danny Gokey, and Brooke Nichols, and Martine Bunch, and Will Graham will be speaking.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you'll notice that we're wearing some garb today. Now, like a lot of people who wear a New York Yankees hat that thinks it's just fashion forward, or in T's case, he's like, well, it just matched my shirt. Often in Canada, it's patriotic because it's the only Major League Baseball team we have, but he's got that Blue Jays hat on. So I said, hey, bro, just wait here a minute. I'll be right back. So what a lot of people wouldn't know is that I'm a 4th, my kids are 5th generation Red Sox fans. And so when I saw that Blue Jays cap, I had to go and don the garb just to try and balance us out. It's like 2 guys in a canoe. Like he's leaning so far right here with this Blue Jays cap. I'm like, okay, we need some New England love here to bring it back. Now, what I will say, and a lot of people can't believe I'll wear this to Fenway to a ball game, but the number 8 on the back is actually autographed. If you can see that, can you see that, Teah?
There it is. Yeah, we got it now.
Yeah, that's the famous Carl Yastrzemski, number 8. So for any Red Sox fans, they're probably thinking, this guy's just wearing that around the house. It's worse than that. You can see me walking through Fenway wearing this jersey. So Teah, welcome. Recently just had the opportunity to spend some time with Teah and Natasha. She shared her testimony actually at the center in Memramcook, where you and I both spend a lot of time still to this day. Maybe we'll just start there. Maybe tell us a little bit about your story, because I know probably a lot of people watching our show don't know you and don't know your music. And we're going to give them a taste of your music, obviously, as a part of this podcast, and links to where they can find your music. And maybe you can even tell us a few of your favorite songs and the meaning behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I grew up in Halifax, one of those kids that was, mostly raised by my grandparents on both sides. So I spent a lot of time with my mother's mom and my father's mom. And yeah, it just, so for me growing up, I basically had two families that functioned very differently from each other. So on my mother's side, where I spent most of my life, where I grew up, was very church home, like you go, I don't care if you're good at sports or whatever. If there's a game Sunday morning, you won't be there because you're at church, right? Like it's that, right? So that was one side. And then on the other side, my grandmother on my father's side, she had 9 sons, no daughters, just 9 boys. And the percentages and odds alone make sure that there's going to be some interesting things with 9 boys, very close in age and all of that. And so I was able to experience two lifestyles, if you will, or two
worldviews.
Yeah, 2 different worldviews, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always share this. There was always this one standout thing that had happened to me that I witnessed in church that really kind of guided a good portion of my life, and not in a positive way either, but still. So I was in church. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, and I saw these 2 ladies having a conversation. One was a little older, and there was a younger woman, and the older lady said to the younger lady, "You shouldn't have been in that club last night." And in my head, even at 7 years old, all I thought was, well, how would she know she was in the club last night? Unless she was in the club last night. Right. And it was just the way it was delivered. Like, I didn't feel like it was an opportunity. I didn't feel like it was like there was any love in there. Like, I didn't feel like she was trying to build this young lady up or anything like that. Like, I just, it
was condemnation.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, I knew, seeing how my uncles all operated and moved. And for them, it was like the way that they dealt with things was just simple. Like, you're my brother and I'm with you, period. Right or wrong, I'm with you. And, if we got to deal with it when we get home, we'll deal with it when we get home. But out here, we're together and I got your back. Right. And so that was something that always stood out to me. Like, I don't know if this is something I want. I'd rather be with the people who are going to have my back. And I can adjust a little bit to you making some bad decisions as long as I know you're going to be there for me when I need you to, So for me, that was kind of a pivotal moment for me. I mean, obviously at that young age, there was not much I could do about how it was affecting me until I got older and I realized it stuck with me. And so, once I was old enough to make some decisions for myself, I figured that church wasn't for me. And I mean, keeping in mind too, that like knowing what I know now versus then is a lot different. And, I was just a kid, but I was caught up in the church itself and not a relationship with Christ, which now I know makes a big difference. Right. At the time I didn't know. So when I got old enough to start making some decisions for myself, I figured it, for me, I would rather be like my uncles. And so, I developed some of the skills they had, and got involved in the drug trade and some gang activity. We used to steal cars was kind of our thing. And so that kind of stuff kind of became who I became. And I was always involved in basketball and music. And so which gave me some opportunities. But I was less interested in that and more interested when I realized, the kind of money I could make even as a teenager by hanging out on a corner that I was going to hang out on anyway, you know,
Right. Yeah.
with people I was going to hang out with anyway. And so that kind of started becoming, you know, you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you can buy your own sneakers, even if they got the Jordan logo on them, and you can,
it's empowerment.
Right. You know, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny what you described there. I'm just finishing a book called The Other Half of Church, and it talks about behavioral modification, left brain church. You know, you shouldn't have been in that pub last night, versus transformation, which is that element of grace and love, where it's like, hey, you shouldn't have been in the pub last night, but it's how you deliver it and how you approach the relationship. I love when you said we would deal with it behind closed doors, right, with the family. And yeah, I mean, how many of us look back and have that moment where we have some autonomy and some freedom because we've found a way to make money? And, you know, when I think about it, for me, it was work. Work was something that everybody celebrated.
Yeah.
And everybody told me I was doing a good thing if I worked. So I was working like 40 hours a week when I was in high school and even junior high school. And like you, I was like, hey, I've got independence. I've got my own money. I'm my own man. Mm-hmm. No one can tell me what I can and cannot do because I have my own resources, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how you go about getting it. It's that we're almost like two wayward sons, right? Where we were running away from our Heavenly Father to wherever we could get our own ability to write our own ticket.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, to even kind of jump on that, what you just said, I would even go as far as to say that, you know, once we connect with our Heavenly Father, we still get to kind of write our own ticket. It has to align. And if it aligns, that's where we get that desires of your heart stuff. Right.
So good, brother. So good. Yeah. And we'll get to that, because I know you were telling me about your granddaughter. And I know that's kind of like, hey, this is how the story can end, right? And we're still all in it till we take our last breath. Yep. So carry us forward. So you're on that street corner. You got some Air Jordans. You got some independence. A couple of hot cars, and you're getting introduced to let's just call it the undercarriage of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, drugs and cocaine and you know, a sense of belonging. You know, the very thing you were looking for in the church and you didn't find, you found on the street corner that you're hanging out on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I always share, like, you know, from the outside, if you've never experienced that type of lifestyle, it looks and feels and seems very dangerous. But for me, that's where I felt safe. You know, I knew the guys that were with me were actually going to be with me if I needed them to be with me. You know, the difference is, and where the danger part comes in, is that now you're putting yourself in situations where you have to count on them for that, you know, whereas, you know, regular life, you don't put yourself in those same scenarios. So that's kind of where kind of my formative years kind of kicked in and how they went. And then
how did you get into music?
So I have a very musical, talented, award-winning family. And it goes back generations. So like my great grandfather, his name Merle Bruce. He's from his hometown was Shelburne, Nova Scotia. Yeah. And he was a tap dancer. So he worked on the rails, and used to go into communities and tap dance, but like big time, you know, like they would bring him in and he'd dance in these ballrooms, and like it was just really, really cool. So that's what I'm kind of a descendant of, you know. And so it started with him, and then like the next generation. So my grandmother was part of a quartet with her sisters. Or a trio, with her two sisters, and they would just go and tour churches and do a cappella singing together. Wow. My uncle Michael used to be a high-end, like top club singer. So he would cover bands and go into different bars all over Canada and perform. And so he was great at that. cool side note for him, a few years back, he had just decided that that music wasn't for him anymore. So he joined the Nova Scotia Mass Choir and started gospel only.
Wow. So where did you get started? Then, like, you've got this family.
Yeah, like it keeps going. Like my uncle Bucky Adams, he's actually a saxophone player, award-winning saxophone player. He's played with some of the big old names that we would know. He actually has East Coast Music Award named after him. There's actually a Bucky Adams Award. At the ECMAs now for him, and then his sons all could sing, but the one I'm closest with is my uncle Corey, and like. Corey Adams, like that fella, listen, if you ever got a chance to hear his voice, like it's just, he sang at my wedding and it was something people continued to talk about. Like I wasn't there in a tux getting married, you know? So it's in me. And then when you get to like my generation, I've got a cousin who's a couple of years older than me from the Halifax area. And he goes by the name of Jay Brew, who was also an award-winning hip hop artist, who toured all over. He's been all over the world touring. He used to tour directly with an artist named Classified, who was also out of Nova Scotia, and so they did a lot together. And so then there's me, right? I've got all this influence in me, yet my singing voice sucks, and I can't play a guitar. So what am I gonna do, right? So I had an older cousin who actually was a DJ, and he took me into his basement. I used to follow him around like he was my big brother, because he kind of was. He was from my father's side of the family, but he was the oldest grandson, which kind of made him like their youngest brother. Yeah. And so then he became my big brother. Right. So I used to, I'd follow him, and he taught me how to write my first song. So I actually wrote, recorded, and released and performed my first song in grade 6. Wow. With him, showing me how. But like, even from his perspective, one of the original rap groups to ever come out of Halifax was called MCJ and Cool G. Now this is way back, 80s, 90s, right? Like this is, we're talking that stuff, right? So they were one of the first groups to ever come out, and he was one of their producers. So again, even in that time, I have access to these excellent musicians, right? So like any given weekend night at my grandparents' house, it's live music. Like there would be parties every weekend, but it would like it wasn't a stereo playing ever. Like instruments come out and everybody gets going, right? So that's kind of where my background comes from as far as music goes, and that's kind of why I have such a passion for it, and why people go through my music catalog. It's very diverse. There's a lot going on in there, and I try to do that on every album. Like just I'll give you, like, I've got albums that where songs, there would be a song that has a country feel to it. There's a song with a rock and roll feel to it. Like just trying to adapt to everything and use it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's funny because people never believe me, but at the end of the day, I barely even listen to rap music. It's not my favorite genre of music. I actually prefer R&B because that's what I grew up on. Right. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into music. That's my interest.
So out of your songs, because I mean, I've listened to a bunch of them now, and I'm like, man, this is good stuff. Like, what song that you wrote has real special meaning to you, and why?
Yeah, well, there's two. Say Amen is very special to me just because the way it came together. That song, I had actually had the instrumental to that song for a while. And I had reached out to Jeff Summers, who sings the chorus on it. I'd reached out to him, and he's actually my worship pastor now. And I'd reached out to him, and I just said, look, like we had just been to the ECMAs together. And little backstory on that. What happened a few years ago with the ECMAs is they had removed the gospel category. So there was no more gospel category in the ECMAs. But then they came with this inspirational category. Right. And once you do that, like the way I viewed it is, okay, well, once we just make it inspirational, that's way too vague, and the Christians are going to lose every time now. Right. So anyway, that was the move that they made. Nothing we can do about it. It just is what it is in that moment. But I saw that Jeff was in the inspirational category, and I knew for a fact that neither of us were going to win in that category. And so I had talked to him after that. That was the year I won the rap album of the year, the hip hop recording of the year. But I had to win it in the secular category. And my attitude to it, like I always say, like, I don't write music or create music to go after awards, but that one I kind of did. And mostly because my attitude was, you know, one thing that God's never taken away from me was my competitive nature. And at this point, you've removed our category, and we were happy hanging out in our own category, minding our business, not messing with you. But if you want to put us in ours, I serve a God that doesn't lose. So if I sit down and decide that I'm coming for you on this one, it could be a problem.
Game on.
Right?
Game on.
And so I did. I had that mentality, like, you know, God, I think it'd be really cool if for the whole next year, the whole region had to deal with the fact that their number one hip hop artist was a Christian. Boldly professing your name. I think that would be fun to watch unfold for a year. And so that's what we did. But I knew when I saw Jeff that night, I felt bad for him because the project that he had submitted for nomination was phenomenal. It was the Louisville Worship Band. They had done, and it was a great project, but I knew it didn't stand a chance, right? Like, because there's so many different things that can fall under inspirational. And these awards are juried, right? So unless you're putting believers in the room, you're not getting a believer's vote.
Which maybe just for our audience in Eastern Canada, that's a highly unlikely probability as a cross section of the population.
Right.
Out of 2 million people. Yeah.
So I saw him that night, and I just said, you know, I think I figured out some of the formula here, and you know, we should collaborate and knock it out. So he said, yes, absolutely, no problem. So I sent him this track, and he asked me what the timeline was on it, and I said, there's really none. Do your thing. Yeah. In that meantime, I just released 2 albums called Ventilation 1 and Ventilation 2. Those projects were basically me working through my feelings. I was adjusting to how my faith matched with my life and how that was kind of coming together. And so it was, those 2 projects were really written to let's address stuff. Let's talk about stuff. Let's talk about money and how we view it. Let's talk about, you know, let's even talk about how we behave with each other as believers, man, and why some people just won't even come mess with us. You know, like, let's talk about that publicly, because we don't regularly. Right. So I did those 2 albums, and so there was a night where Tash and I had gone to our cottage, and I just realized that, you know, the past couple of years, I'd been so caught up on being in the fight, and I was exhausted, you know, And while I was in the fight, I hadn't taken a moment to kind of look around and see all the blessings that I still had, you know.
Ooh, and this is good. We got to pause there for a minute. So you're in it. You're busy. You're in the fight. And what were you losing sight of? You were losing sight of
the blessings that I had. Like, I wasn't acknowledging what God was actually doing in my life. Like, at this point, you know, we owned our cottage, right? Like, so technically I have property even, you know, like, that's unheard of for how I grew up, you know? So there were a lot of good things happening in my life. You know, my wife and our relationship was going great. You know, things are good. My granddaughter was born at this point. Like, a lot of great things in my life, you know? So we were driving home from the cottage, and I'm because when we travel together, because, you know, I listen to music, Tasha likes to watch movies, so she has her headphones in while I drive, which is great for me, because highway trips, that's when I actually take a chance to listen to people's albums, right? Because I have time, right? So I'm driving along, and I'm in the car driving, and I'm crying, right? And because I'm now wrestling with this. Come on, man. Like, I get it. You had to stand up for all the social justice things that you stood up for the past couple of years, but don't lose sight of the wins.
Right.
Don't lose sight of that stuff. And so I'm dealing with that while I'm driving along the highway. And all of a sudden Tasha looks over at me. She's like, "Oh, you're in your feelings today, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I started like explaining what was going on. And at the same time, I felt it on my heart. And I don't encourage anybody to do this, but I felt this on my heart was check your email. Right. So I'm driving along and I always had.
But you pulled over. You pulled over when you did that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I open it up and there's an email from Jeff in there.
Right.
So while I'm going through this and I'm experiencing this, Jeff hits me with this. Like I get this email from him and it's his vocals for this song that I didn't even know we were writing yet. Right. I just sent this to him a while back.
Yeah.
There's no time
to digest. God
lays something on your heart, write it. Right.
Right.
So he ends up writing the chorus to say amen. And when I'm listening to it, I start realizing, man, like this is exactly what I needed to hear today. Forget the song now. Like this is what I needed to minister to me today. Right. So I get home and I didn't even unpack. I just went straight to write my parts. Right. So I wrote my verse and I'm still sitting there with it. And I'm like, it needs something else. Now, Fresh IE, who I can't do any of these interviews and not mention him. Fresh IE is big brother, mentor, all of that to me. He's a Grammy nominated Christian artist out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. But he's the one that kind of gave me my opportunity in terms of like, he produced my first project for me. He, all because he felt the Lord laid it on his heart to reach out to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did all of that for me and, took me on my first tour, taught me the ropes, taught me what ministry looks like and what I'm doing, all of that. But at this time, he had just finished recording an absolute worship album. Like the whole album was just worship songs. He was partnering with all these worship artists and he was getting into singing himself instead of just rapping. And so as I felt it on my heart was like, this song needs him. I don't know where or how, but the song needs him. And I still joke with him today about, I knew that song was anointed because I sent him the track and said, I need a verse from you. And he had it back to me in 3 hours. Now, most of the people watching this right now, you don't know Fresh IE, but I can tell you that 3 months is a stretch for him to get something back. So when I got it back in 3 hours, God was moving. Right.
Yeah.
So we put the song together and it just, I released it and the movement off it, the responses to it, not just, and because I know how that sounds. I'm not talking about numbers. What I'm talking about in terms of response to it was, I could tell in the way I sounded even on that song that I had been struggling for a while, that I've been, dealing with, because I'll be honest with you, like those years, like 2020 to even 2022, like, man, I was even wrestling with my faith. Like I knew God and I were good, but I didn't know how I felt about his people.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. 2020 to 2022 for the church in Canada was tough.
So that's kind of
we'll leave it at this. There was a sifting and a culling of the herd that really divided the church, right?
So that's
so I got you.
So that's where that song came from and why it was so important to me. The other one, and I'll do this one quickly. The other one was, I guess it's complicated. It's probably my other most favorite and most important song to me. And the reason why is because during that time, I also understand who I am, what my role is in society, and where I sit, even as a kingdom builder, as part of the faith community. Like I get it, and I land into a pretty interesting intersection. Yeah. As a man of faith, I am that. I'm also a Black man in Atlantic Canada. Right. And
let's give some context there too, because I've spent a lot of time traveling everywhere.
Right.
And as you know, I spent quite a bit of time in Charleston. And one of the things that Sarah and I were shocked at when we got down there was the level of segregation that still exists. And I'm not used to that, here, but also, like Canada's like such a melting pot of culture.
Yep.
And we have like, like in Nova Scotia, a lot of the Black descendants are loyalists to the British Crown, right? Like your grandfather or uncles from Shelburne. Well, those are all people that came up from Boston.
Yeah.
But let's spin off on this just for a quick second, because I don't want to hijack you. But it's not like you're in the States where, you're in a city with 800,000 people and 400,000 are Black and 400,000 are white. I mean, we got a rainbow of society here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite things actually about Halifax is that it's not so big that like you have to interact with each other.
Yeah.
It's not big enough for you to just segregate it. But that also comes with its stuff, because I've always been one of those people that encourages people to actually embrace the differences. There are differences between us.
Yeah.
The way our bodies even work and responds to things. And it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's the body of Christ when we come together.
Right. Like, and if we can learn to, accept and learn those things about each other, it makes us all a lot better. Like there's things that I can contribute, there's things that you can contribute that culturally I don't already have access to, and vice versa for you. There's things that I can contribute that culturally you just don't have access to, that makes us both better,
together.
So, and on the flip side to that, like, because of my lifestyle, my experiences weren't always good. So like, so that song, I guess it's complicated. It happened right after the George Floyd death. And and what I realized was happening is, because I am both a Black man in Atlantic Canada and a Christian, I'm being asked a lot of questions and being put in situations where, I'm expected to be the expert on all things racism and all things faith.
Racial divides and faith and integration.
And so for me, I accepted, what, God, you did put me in this position. Cool. I'll be the bridge. But I got to do it in a way where I'm not reopening this. I saw the same video everybody else saw, and I saw myself in it. Right. Yeah. And so every time I have to have this discussion over and over and over again, I'm reopening that, and I'm having to deal with that.
It's triggering. It's triggering
every time. Right. So I remember one of my pastors had asked if I'd come to the church and have, because he wanted to discuss it on video and all that. And I was like, absolutely. Because one of the things for me is, I can't tell people I want you to listen and then not show up to say something.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So now I had people listening. So I have to go and I have to talk, man. I got to share my experiences. And that's the other thing that I've always been clear on. I never share from opinion publicly or anything else. I don't share from opinion, only experience. Right. So if I haven't experienced it, I don't talk about it. Or know somebody close to me that has that kind of thing, right? But I told him, I'll come, but all you're going to get is I'm going to tell you things that have happened to me, how I deal with them, how I navigate it, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, we're sitting there having that conversation, and I just realized, man, this is hard. Like, I'm really having a hard time doing this again. And now I'm doing it. And I know his intention was never to put me in any kind of awkward position.
Yeah, especially when the goal is to create unity and not division.
Felt like, I didn't like it, right? So anyway, I went home that night and I just decided, if I have to have the conversation, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it in a way where I can put it on a song and then lots of people can hear it from that perspective. And so I really sat down with it and took some time and was like, I want to make sure that I cover everything. I want to talk about how these things impact the church community. I want to talk about, the difference between hate and fear, right? I don't hate, I don't hate anybody, right? Like I don't, but I've had a healthy fear of policing. I don't think that all that's that. And I always say, like, I think that that's dumb to think that they're all bad. That's stupid. Don't do that.
Yeah. Right? Exactly.
And the whole, like that's dumb to me. Like, I know that there's value in them and we need them. I just think that their system is broken. But I also, for another day, it's another conversation for another day. But I also think that in a way that our policing system is set up for these officers to fail too.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. There's,
Right.
I mean, the fact is not everybody's a racist, but racism is real.
Right.
Right. And it can go in any direction.
Yep.
I mean,
so yeah, that's kind of, so I
yeah.
wrote that song with that heart was, okay, I want to make sure that everything I say on here comes from a place of love, and that people recognize
awesome,
that
man.
we're going to have the hard conversation, but I wanted to make sure that the way you receive it, it's probably the first song I've ever written where I really genuinely cared about how you received it.
Right.
I didn't want to create any more division than what we already had.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I've got to speak from my own personal perspective, but also from my faith perspective too. And it has to come together because Jesus didn't avoid tough stuff.
No.
He just
he spoke into it. Yeah. He spoke into it.
Okay. I still have to address this.
Yeah.
But let me find so if you listen to that song, you'll see, like, I even talk about that, like, to the church, don't hide behind your diverse seats. We're not dying in your buildings. We're out in these streets, you know, like,
exactly.
like, you know, because I felt like at that time, everybody was talking about their diversity, but nobody was outside doing anything. Right?
Okay. So this is good. Let's transition because I want to be mindful of our time, but you and I have had similar frustrations. I mean, Fathers for Fathers exists as a parachurch with one universal objective, and it's to go out and get the men. It's to be stretcher bearers, ambulances, to find the brokenness out in the streets, out in the world, and call the men like a flag bearer back to the church. But at the same time, I have trepidation about that because I'm like, my God help us when we get these broken guys to the church, right? Because they could easily get what you experienced when you were 7 years old, which is condemnation rather than love and acceptance, where, you know, I call it being pre-sanctified. Like I did, Teah, neither you or I came out of the box pre-sanctified.
Right.
Like I know I did, and I'm pretty sure you did. So it's a journey where, you know, if you look at us when we accepted Christ, we were not a shiny copper penny like maybe we are today, and even now we're not. So let's talk about this. Like, what's our fear as men who are out there trying to rally people to our Father, to our Lord and Savior, but we've got trepidation about, well, what if we get that hook? We get that, I guess it's not complicated, bridge built, and they come over the bridge only to find someone on the other end who isn't very warm or receiving. Like, how do you navigate that fear, brother? Because I know you and I have gone through the same pilgrimage on this in Canada in 2020 to 2022 to come out the other side being like, we know that the church is God's answer to a broken world to deliver the gospel, but how do we implore our brothers and sisters to actually get busy going out and not sitting in the pew or the church?
I think for me, man, like, honestly, I removed that responsibility from myself, and let me explain what I mean by that. I say it and it makes people laugh, but I'm always serious about it. Like, I have a lot of conversations with God, man, and like, one of the things I talk about, whether he accepts it that way or not, one of the things I talk about is, God, I'm too old for this rap stuff. I do not want to be out here wasting time, you know? And so I believe that God doesn't waste he doesn't send me places just to send me. It's not just to go, because he knows I don't really want to at this point in my life and career, you know? So if he's sending me, something's going to happen. I don't have to know what it's going to be. You know, that part, that's out of my hands. And that was something I had to kind of learn to accept and come to grips with. As with an evangelistic type spirit that I have, I know I'm leaving. I know I'm going to come in here, I'm going to rally you, I'm going to get you all fired up, and then I'm gone. And I have to trust that God, who's giving me the desires of my heart, knows that the reason I am there is to seek souls. I have to trust that he agrees with that. And that's why he sent me. The person or the people that needed to hear what I was there for is going to get the message, and then from there go get exactly what it is that they were going to need. And I just have to trust that. And I can't get myself caught up in the weeds in it.
So there's a letting go. There's a letting go, knowing our lane, right? It's evangelism. and then trusting that the church, which is supposed to disciple, will do it.
And here's the thing: I don't even put it on the church. This is a direct partnership between me and God.
Okay, nice.
And my partner does his job well.
Yes, he does. He's been at it for a while.
Right? Yeah. He's got a track record, man. And
it's a good track record.
Yeah, we can count on it. And so that's I do. I don't overthink awesome. A lot of things, man, because again, his ways aren't mine. And there's some things that people always say, like, tell me why you believe what you believe. And all I can say is I wish I had a cool, crazy, awesome. I just seen some stuff, man. Yeah. There's some things that I've seen that have caused me to just straight up believe this God is real. There's some things that happened in my life no man could have done.
Yeah. And that's our prayer, by the way, for guys listening right now, is that you would have that moment where you would, and as an act of contrition, just say, hey, man, I don't have this figured out. If you're there, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. Right. And he will. Like, if it's authentic and it's humble and it's real, it doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, what mistakes you've made. T and I both made terrible, terrible mistakes. Yeah. But our God,
that I'll add though, Jonathan,
is forgiving and loving.
Is the other
throw
thing
it down
for me too was the letting go and leaving it with God and not worrying about which church is the one that's catching these people, because if God and I are working right in our situation, he's leading them to the right place. That part. But the other part of letting go for me is the reason why I don't overthink it is because, once you start overthinking things, your personal opinions start coming in. Yeah. And whether we want to or not, I don't care how hard you try at it, we all have a bit of a judgmental spirit in us somehow. Yeah. Right. And so the only way to make sure that I'm ministering to everyone who needs it is to make sure that part's completely gone. So I don't see how you look. I don't see how you
leave the cynic in you at home.
It's gone. Right. Yeah. It's gone. And the only way for me to do that is to not overthink. I'm here because God told me to be here. That's it. We're going to do what we came to do. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to get back in the car and, we're going to make sure. Now, the other piece to that, now it's not just that simple either. I very much have conversations with the pastors and organizations that bring me in. Yeah. Here's what we do here. Like, it's just, I'm not going to come in here and entertain your people. That's not what I'm doing. Yeah. There's a ton of rappers out there for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly.
So that's kind of how we've been able to reach as many people as we have. Like I was telling you before we started recording, like we're well over 4,000 people who have made decisions for Christ. That's awesome. At our events, and I think that the reason for that is because, my pastor talks a lot about, everybody's welcome at Jesus' table. And that's kind of how I lead my ministry. That's how I run my ministry. Everybody is welcome at Jesus' table, man. Like, the language I speak, the music I speak is supposed to attract people with some rough backgrounds. Yeah. That's what hip hop was built out of.
So to bring this in for a landing, let's talk a little bit about marriage and you and Natasha. What would you say one of the biggest hurdles that you guys have had to overcome in recent years? So, a lot of people know your testimony, and if they don't, they can check you out elsewhere for those early rough years when, you were recovering from addiction and she stood with you and you guys plowed through together, and you're just an amazing couple. It's a blessing to interact with each of you anytime. But in recent years on this journey of sanctification, because we didn't come out of the box with a bow for Jesus, what's been a hurdle for you guys that you've had to overcome, and you can see how God, as you put it, don't lose sight of the wins, because I think that's totally the title of this interview, by the way. Maybe that could be a song, Don't Lose Sight of the Wins, right? But like, what would you say has been a big win for you guys as a couple that you were really up against it, and you could just see how he brought you through?
I think, it's ongoing. I think for my wife and I, a lot of it is, learning each other and what makes us move. We're both very aggressive and stubborn people, both of us. And I mean, here's the thing too. Like, we were born at odds. I'm Halifax, she's a Dartmouth girl, right? Like,
darkness.
We were born class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So So yeah, but also understanding that even in those things that between the two of us that can frustrate each other about our big boldness, right? The things that can frustrate us are also strengths. Like, I've had to learn that, my wife, by giving her opinion, isn't against me.
Right.
In fact, if I listen to what she says and actually take some of it in and figure it out, I'm dealing with one of the strongest partners anyone could have.
Right.
And we're going to go win together, and vice versa. Like, there's so many times where I'll have something in mind. Like there's a lot of conversations Tasha and I have where I have to walk away, and then I'll sit with it for a second and be like, okay, she was absolutely right. Why was I arguing?
That was good wisdom.
Right.
Yeah, that was good
but
wisdom.
Because of our personalities, we're going to stay in the fight if we have to. Right. And so I think for us, probably the biggest thing is that, and I know for me, I don't, because my wife is as strong as she is, I'm not going to speak for her and put words in her mouth. But I will say that for me, I think the biggest thing for me was learning that, this woman's not against me just because we disagree on some things. She's actually got my back, and her sharing with me what she might disagree with is coming from a place of her trying to make me better and make sure that I continue to win. I know my wife respects me as a provider. She respects me as a husband. She loves how I raise our granddaughter together. Like all of those things, like
sure.
And because she learned from me, I need to know those things. I'm moving so fast that just sitting with me doesn't let me know I'm appreciated.
Right.
I don't have time to just think or wonder if that's the case.
Right.
And if you don't tell me, I'm going to assume that I'm over here working for nothing.
Right.
Right. So for her, even learning that for me, like,
so like every other man, you need that constant.
So much better now than years before, even, right? So I'd say that's it. Is we've learned to appreciate each other for the absolute asset that each other is to the other one. We've learned to appreciate that, value it, and use it. And for both of us, I'd say we've both become a lot more successful in the fields that we move in because of that.
Yeah. Well, she's phenomenal at our job. So she's a fan of Teen Challenge Canada. And for those of you that don't know what Teen Challenge is, it's a ministry started by David Wilkerson in the 50s in New York City. And it's gone all over the world, 82 countries, and it's addictions recovery program for young men and women. And Teah, you went through the program in 2011, and Natasha is the business development officer for the very facility that you attended. Yeah. And I get the privilege of working with her as a board member for Canada, and I love her heart and her enthusiasm for what she's doing. So yeah, she's easy to work with. I'm like, here's the phone number, go get them. I don't have to worry after that, man. She's gonna.
Done. We'll make the call.
It's like letting loose a pit bull. Well, listen, before we wrap up, I just want to get maybe a parting piece of wisdom from you. I've already got don't lose sight of the wins and win together.
Yep. And win on purpose. Win on purpose. I've preached messages on that because if you look at any championship sports team, your Red Sox have been successful for a long time.
Yeah, it's because of the big payroll, though.
True. But they do it on
I may as well say it because everybody watching right now, it's like, because of big payroll, they're buying the wins. But anyway,
right? But they don't just show up at the field and win just because somebody had to make a decision to make sure that they won on purpose.
We want to win.
Steps to
we want to win. Yeah.
And they win on purpose. And so that's kind of my motto in life, man. Win on purpose. Get up and do something this morning that is going to help you win the day. I love it. Right?
Yeah. Which is 2 Corinthians 10:4, when the Apostle Paul says, take your thoughts captive. What you're saying is win on purpose. Like this doesn't happen organically without effort. God expects us to come to work and meet him.
Always be looking to offer hope, even if you don't feel like you have it. Offer hope. Always offer hope. My little side name, actually, I'll show you the shirt now. Shameless plug. But my brand, it's Neighborhood Hope Dealer.
Yeah, I love it.
Right?
Love it. I love it. I love it.
I encourage people to just always be offering hope. Whatever it is, whatever you're hoping for, somebody might need to hear it. It might be the connection you need to help you get the hope you're seeking. And
how do people get some of your garb? Like, how does somebody get that T-shirt? Because I know you also have that available.
So 180.com and click the swag store. Other than that, if you go to any of my social media accounts, you can send me a message and I'll ship whatever I need to you, or I might even be in a city close to you sooner than later.
There you go. Yeah. All right, man. Want to really appreciate, just obviously thank you for coming today, and appreciate you and appreciate your ministry, and just looking forward to obviously spending more time with you and your wife. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast today, brother. You're a blessing.
Oh man, this was my pleasure, brother. Really is.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to you.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Stay on, bro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holding me, I'm sinking, Father, this world is just too much on my own.